Hello, everyone. This is Helen Macmillan, and welcome to Breakthrough to the Unstoppable You. We're here today to uncover some of the ways that you've been holding yourself back, some of the ways that you've been limiting yourself, and I'm going to share with you how you can get around that and a very fast, quick shift process with you today. But before that, for those of you who aren't really familiar with me, my name is Helen Macmillan, and I am a success coach. I work with entrepreneurs, and I help them to shift into what I call their $1,000,000 zone of joyful success. So what is the $1,000,000 zone? It is a state of being, actually. If you've ever had a day where you've woken up in the morning and things just go right all day, everything comes at you with ease, with grace. Opportunities seem to appear like magic, and you're handling whatever frustrations come your way. Your stress levels are really low, and all of us have also experienced not being in the $1,000,000 zone, which is where you're anxious and frustrated, and everything you can't seem to catch a break. So being in the $1,000,000 zone is kind of like having your easy button for joyful success. And I spent many, many years outside of my $1,000,000 zone, which is how I discovered my $1,000,000 zone. I am originally from Jamaica. I had a business there for 15 years. My parents were also entrepreneurs, and I was blessed. I didn't know it at the time, because at 10 I'd rather have been playing than going to look at houses with my parents, or in summer holidays working in the office. But I was getting a first-hand experience of how to start and run a business. And I learned a lot. What I did not learn, because it was not modeled for me, was self-care. So fast forward many years, I started my first business, which was a private practice, physical therapy private practice, when I was 24. And I didn't know for many years what it was like to leave my office before dark. I had 2 young children, and right around the time when I started my business, I actually got separated from my husband, my first husband. So here we are, and I'm making ends meet, and I'm in a service business, right? I'm taking care of other people, and particularly people who are in pain. So it was very easy for me to say yes and continue saying yes. It was hard for me to say no to someone who was in pain. So I'd keep adding more and more. And it got to the point where I would look I had what the world considered success, right? I would look in my appointment book, and I'd be booked out for like 3 weeks in advance. And what that made me feel was anxiety, because I looked in that book and I didn't see me. There was no space for me. I burned out. I moved. I had been separated for a while by this time, and I'd grown my business. And I was dating someone in England for a couple of years, and got to the point where I was like, you know what? I can't do this way anymore. I'm out of here. I was completely burnt out. So I called up my boyfriend, and I told him, I said, I'm moving. I'm coming to England. And he went, okay. And so I put things in motion to start to move. Arranged with my ex-husband, who was by then remarried, to have our boys come and live with them. And just about 2 months into my preparations, about halfway there, in the process of closing down my business and all this, and my boyfriend breaks up with me. Yeah. It was a shock. Luckily, I've always been very spiritual, and I have a very close relationship to what I call Source. And I prayed about it and I said, what should I do? And I heard very clearly, go anyway. And I said, you do know I know two people in England, right? And one of them just broke up with me. And I heard, go anyway. And that was the beginning of my journey to becoming unstoppable, which is what I want to talk to you about today. Because at every point in our lives, we have moments, we have choice points where we can decide. We make a decision. We come to that choice point where we decide, and depending on what we decide is depending on what direction it goes in. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what stops us. And I want to say, before we get too much further and too deep in there, as I speak today, as I talk about various things, I want you to write down your questions. Don't wait. Don't wait. I will have you will have a chance for, and I will address your questions along the way. But I want you to write them down as soon as you think about them. And there's a little chat box there. There's a Facebook chat box there, and just put your questions in right there. There's also, if you look on the right side of your screen, there's a PDF there of the quick shift process handout. And so if you go ahead and click on that link and download that PDF, you'll be able to follow along when we're going through it in a little while. I'm also going to invite my online business manager, Rhonda Wall, to join me, and she'll be able to help me with this process of making sure that I see your questions, because I get very involved and I get really excited about what I'm sharing with you. So she'll make sure I don't miss your questions. So Rhonda will be popping in. You'll see her join us live in a little bit. So let's talk about what really, what it means to be unstoppable. Like, what stops most people, right? And there's one thing that stops anybody, and that is fear. Fear. It may be disguised as things like frustration, anxiety, confusion, overwhelm. Yeah. But there are really only two states of being, and that is love and fear. And so if it's not love, it's under fear. And so everything falls under one of those two categories. So we know it's fear that stops us. So if you're going to become unstoppable, you've got to learn to manage fear. Now, a lot of people want to get to the point where they believe that, we hear all this talk about being fearless. You have to learn to be fearless, and there's an illusion that people who are very successful and people who have accomplished things don't feel fear. You get to the point where you don't feel fear. And I just want to disabuse everyone of that today. It's not that you're never going to feel fear, ever again. But it's about learning to manage your fear, and more importantly, it's about learning to recognize if it's true fear or if it's false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. So how does that work, right? This is how you can have an experience. You don't have to have a direct experience for yourself in order for a pattern to be formed in your brain of resistance and fear. So, for example, I don't have to be bitten by a dog. I could witness someone being bitten by a dog, and I can develop a fear of dogs. Right? My brain says those dogs can be dangerous. Dogs can be dangerous. So what happens is your mind, your brain, there's a conscious and the subconscious mind. And I love the analogy of the glacier, right? This is the water. And this, here's a little boat. My drawing's not too great. But this is what we see. So this would be the conscious mind. And this would be the subconscious mind. Right? So an interesting thing is, right, this is how the Titanic sunk, right? Because here it is that they couldn't avoid what they couldn't see. They could try and go around it, but there was all of this. This is what we are not aware of. I remember years ago, I had a car accident. When I was in college, it was my first car. I was so thrilled. I had saved my money, and I bought for $300 whole dollars. I bought a little gray Ford Fiesta. And I was going to Howard University at the time, so I was making off of a side street, but there was a light there, and I couldn't really see because the sun was right behind the light, but the cars were moving, so I went to turn, and because the sun was in my eye, I couldn't see the car that was also coming across, and so I turned right in front of the car and hit them. It was such a shock because I hadn't seen it, so I couldn't avoid it. And this is the thing, we can't avoid what we can't see. So all of this in your subconscious mind, it comes from your conditioning, from experiences, past experiences, from what you're taught, right? From the minute that we pop out the womb, we're being taught who we should be, right? What a good girl does, what a great wife or husband does, what is success, right, in the world's terms. So that's why the $1 Million Zone is actually a place that's very unique to each individual, because what success, you have to learn to define success for yourself. And learning how to, so that recognizing what you want, okay, and being able to learn how to recognize what is in all the beliefs that are in your subconscious mind. So let's talk about limiting beliefs, because today I said I'd share with you how we shift limiting beliefs. A limiting belief is a belief that you is not aligned with what it is that you're wanting to create. So for example, I might say, I want to earn $1 million. And there's a part of me that doesn't believe that that's possible. Okay? So, or there's a part of me that might have witnessed, like for me growing up, I had an uncle who was very wealthy but seemed very unhappy. So in my mind, I formed the belief that rich people aren't really happy. So what happens in a case like that is you get stopped each time. What's stopping you is your saboteur, right? And what I want you to understand more than anything else is that this voice, this unconscious response, is your way of a part of you trying to protect you from something. Because if being wealthy means, if I have a high value on being happy, and I think rich people are unhappy, then that part of me doesn't want me to get rich. And that's how we end up in a situation where you work really hard and you're earning pretty good money, and yet you never seem to have enough, right? It's kind of like inviting money into your home and going, yay, I love you, great, come on in, and then showing it straight through your house to the back door. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when we unconsciously start to stop ourselves. Because we have to look at that so that we can figure out how to break through it. Remember, you can't change what you can't see. So the first thing is you got to learn to start recognizing where you're stopping yourself. And it's about recognizing the patterns. Now, unfortunately, all of us have blind spots. where we can't really, we just can't see it. Everyone else can see it. You know, one of the famous blind spots is your gifts and talents. It's sitting here right at the end of your nose, and it's easy for everybody else to see. It's hardest for you to recognize it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happens when we get into that, when we hit the wall of fear, and when it shows up in a very subtle and unconscious way. So we get into what we call the cycle of quitting. And what it might look like is, you have some fear. Okay. And then that might show up as overwhelm. Okay. And then we might even, because we're overwhelmed, we might start to blame somebody. Usually someone or something outside of yourself. So I bet this has never happened to you, but I have caught myself in the past. It's like, I'll be walking past and I'll trip over something that my son has left on the floor, and instantly I'd be like, why'd you leave that there? Right? So we get into blame, and then we might project. Why'd you leave that there? It's all your fault. It's all about you. This has nothing really to do with me. Okay. And then we might get into more, overwhelm or rage or blame. Overwhelm, blame. And then what happens is then we quit. We take action, right? Take some action. This would be where we would quit. That's too hard. It wasn't meant to be. That's a really good one. I don't think this was part of my path and my journey, or that's just not how I am, right? Or maybe it wasn't meant to be for me. It works for everybody else, but not for me. And then once we quit, an interesting thing happens is we feel relief initially, right? You ever notice when you're like, oh yeah, I mean, I just did this the other day. Like, I don't think I'm going to do that thing anymore. Okay? And I immediately, when I make the decision, I feel relief. I felt the same thing when I left my first marriage. I call it the post-separation high. I felt really good. And then comes second guessing. Did I make the right decision? Right? And second guessing again, you're back in fear, and so on. So what do we do about this? How do we end this cycle of quitting? Because we've got to do that in order to become unstoppable. Because the only difference between success and failure is that you stop trying. Okay? So then we have what I call the cycle of progress. Cycle of progress. It begins with clarity, right? You get clear. Because once you're clear, so for example, if someone says to me, I want you to come visit me, come to tea at my house at 4 o'clock on Sunday. That's very clear. I know it's easy for me to take action on that, as opposed to, okay, let's get together at some point. The more clear you are, the easier it is to take action. Once you take action, you get results. Okay? Let's bring this down a little bit so you can see. Okay. When you take results, it builds your confidence. Because one of the reasons that we stop a lot is the fear, and then we don't take action, and then when we don't take action, we start to feel bad, right? Or we don't get the results that we really want. And then we're in the cycle of quitting. We feel bad. Our energy is low. Then we don't take more action. Then we might beat up on ourselves, especially in our head. Because have you ever noticed that the way you talk to yourself, you'd never speak to another human being like that? Okay? Once you get confident, then it's easier to take action, which leads to even more results, which leads to further clarity. Because here's the thing about clarity. Clarity is something you live into. You can get a certain amount of clarity, but you've got to then take a step. You've had to take some action. And when you take action, you'll have an outcome. And at that point, you can decide, I like that, or that's not what I wanted. Let me tweak something and take a different action. So this is the cycle of progress, and it's really important for us to get that clarity. And sometimes we need help in doing that because, remember, fear, confusion is a symptom of fear. So I want you to write that down. Confusion is a symptom of fear. And what leads to the states of being that we get into, the confusion, the even decreased energy, right? The inability to take action, the procrastination, the overwhelm. When you're overwhelmed, your mind is not clear. It's not clear what action I should take and in what order. And what happens usually is that you end up spinning your wheels and you don't do anything. So when you're in that place, what you need to do is make a shift. So I've developed a quick 4-step process, which is the PDF that I have given you with. And it looks like this. Okay. So if you pull it up now, we're going to go through those questions. Because what this will do for you, and it's so simple, it can be deceptive how profound it is. But I've used this myself, and I've used it with my clients for a long time. What you need to do is figure out first what you're feeling. So it might be overwhelm. So you literally would write in, and it's right on the first one. Just answer the question, literally. A lot of times we overcomplicate things. And so simple is profound. So you would answer the first question, I'm feeling. Say overwhelmed. I would like to feel is the second question. What would you prefer to feel instead? I would like to feel clear. I would like to feel calm. I would like to feel like I'm accomplishing something. Okay, great. In order to achieve that, question number 3, I need to believe. Why is that important? Because your beliefs actually drive your behaviors and your emotions. Oftentimes, you're not even consciously aware of the thought that you're thinking. So we get there through the back door by tapping into the emotions that you're feeling. And then it will lead you backwards. So you're like, okay, so if I'm overwhelmed and I would rather feel calm and clear and focused, then what do I need to believe? I need to believe that I know what I'm doing, that there's a solution, that I can get help if I need it. I can figure this out. All of those might be appropriate. But what's interesting is as you do it for yourself, based on where you are in your situation, the answers are just going to pop into your head. It's quite magical the way it happens. And then question 4, one action I can take towards that is. So what might pop in for this scenario that we are playing with here is I can sit and make a list of exactly what it is I need to do and prioritize it. And just start with one thing, the most important thing. The important thing is to get into action because fear and confusion want you to stop. And the antidote for that, the antidote is action. So this is a quick way to get into action because if you want to become unstoppable, You've got to figure out how to get back in the game, because it's not about, whether or not you're going to be sidetracked sometime in life or get off track. It's inevitable. What's important is how quickly can you get back in the game. And this is one tool. There are many tools that I teach that enable you to do that. And I want to share really quickly with you the shift process, right? Because when you are, like we said earlier, when you've been stopped, oops, sorry, my pen fell. When you've been stopped and you need to get going again, you need to make a shift. Okay, so if you're stuck and you need to become unstuck, that's a shift. So there's a quick 5-step process to becoming unstuck, and it's how to make a shift, right? When you need a shift. So the S stands for seeing, right? Which is awareness. Because remember the story of the car accident, you can't avoid or you can't change what you can't see. The second the H stands for honor, which is accepting what is without judgment. Oh, my writing is terrible today. Hopefully you can read that. So it's interesting how many times we go into, you've been in the middle of your day and you've got everything organized, and I'll give you an example from right now in my life. So I'm getting ready to set up for this live stream, and my husband gets home from soccer, and he's like, I need you to look at my foot. I don't know, I think it's broken. Excuse me? This is life, right? This is life. Things are going to have come up. Okay, stick an ice pack on it. I'll be with you in an hour when I'm done. Elevate it, ice it, put some compression on it. I'll get right back to you, and we'll deal with that next. So it's about prioritizing, right? But if I go into judgment, which is like, oh my gosh, this is a really bad thing. This is the worst thing that could ever happen. I could easily have gone down what I call a rabbit hole. And I could have been completely sidetracked, overwhelmed, gone into anxiety, and my mind would happily take me, to the place of worst case scenario ever. Okay? And this brings up another important point, which is that to meet the challenges in life, you must have developed these skills prior to. You can't prepare for an emergency in the middle of the emergency, right? You have got to have these skills and tools as a part of your foundation. And so that when something comes up, you respond to it very differently. That's building that core strength in you that makes you imperturbable, so that you can bend and be flexible and meet whatever comes your way in life, and be able to handle it with grace and with ease. And yes, even joy. So the I stands for identify, because you got to identify, first of all, what you want, what the obstacles are, identify what you would prefer, what you are feeling. There's lots of things to identify. The F stands for focus and feel. So, because you can't feel what you can't heal, what you won't feel. And focusing on what you want. Most of us, unfortunately, don't even recognize that most of the time we're focusing on what we don't want. And that's like going into a restaurant and telling the waitress, I don't want chicken. I don't really feel for tomatoes. No, I don't want rice. She doesn't know what to bring you. And it's the same with the universe, with life. If you want to become a magnet for attracting what it is you want with ease and with joy, you got to have that clarity and recognize and focus on what it is you want. And then the T stands for tools for transformation, right? And that is all the tools that I teach to manage your mindset, to manage your energy, and for unlearning a lot of the beliefs and the patterns that no longer serve us. This is a process that you absolutely, I can't do on my own. Most of us can't do it on our own because you can't see your blind spots. I can't see my blind spots. So let's begin the first step with the clarity, right? Where are you stopping yourself? Where is your challenge? Because where are your fears showing up? And I want you to ask yourself that today. What am I really afraid of? And if you learn nothing else today, if you learn to ask yourself that, every time you notice that you've stopped yourself. Now, here's the problem. Most times you can't really see that you are stopping yourself. And if you're in the cycle of quitting and the cycle of blame, and you're busy blaming someone else, you can't see. You will not be able to see where you are stopping yourself. So I want to invite you to, I want to make you I want to give you a gift. Let's put it that way. I want to give you a gift. I'd like to offer you a complimentary 30-minute call with me to get on the phone, one-on-one, you and I, and we can discover, A, what's stopping you, and B, what that $1 million zone is for you. Because when you know where you are, you know where you want to go to, then between that is the path to get there, the obstacles to be overcome. And it's so much easier with a guide and with a plan. So if you want to, you'll see on your screen, you'll see that link. You just need to click that link, and it will take you to a page where you just fill out a brief application, and that will give me a little bit of information about you, and we can go ahead, and once you completed that, we'll send you a link to schedule a time that's convenient for you, and I'd be happy to get on the phone, and because we've just scraped the tip of the iceberg. That iceberg way back here. Okay? Because here's what you can see and what you're aware of. And here's what you can't. But we can make this. There are tools for making this really easy. So how do you become unstoppable? Let's just recap. You got to be able to see where you're stopping yourself. You've got to be able to recognize it. You've got to be very clear on what it is you want, and you've got to find a way to stay in action and stay in the game. You've got to find a way to manage your fear and not feel like you have to get rid of it, but to be able to manage it. Now, I'm not seeing Rhonda pop up at all there. So, Rhonda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
Hi. Okay, I'll come on.
Were you hiding out there?
I was hiding in the background there. I wanted to be quiet so everyone could listen to you, but we do have some questions, and remind people you can click on the button and apply for the complimentary session. And I can contest that it's well worth it. I have the privilege of being able to work with Helen on a daily basis, and she's amazing. So you will be very shocked at what can be accomplished in 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
And at least getting through to that first piece there, and realizing what it is that might be stopping you.
Yes.
So I highly recommend that you fill out the application and get that 30 minutes with Helen, because it's well worth it, and it's free. So
yeah.
That makes it even more worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have some great questions, Helen. Okay, so let's see. Okay. All right. So we have one question. Someone wants to know, how can you start to get motivation to take action? So if you're not feeling motivated to take the actions that you know you need to take, what are some ways to get yourself motivated?
Okay, so literally using this tool is a fantastic way to get into action. And it's simple. Like all you got to do is whip this out, print it off, and literally answer those questions. Because usually if you're not feeling motivated, what are you feeling? Right? And so you start there. You're like, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling unmotivated. What would you like to feel instead? I'd
Right.
love, right? I'd love to feel
You'd like to feel
inspired.
energized and motivated and
Exactly.
creative and all of those things. Yeah.
Exactly. And in order to achieve that, what do you need to believe?
That you are motivated and creative and energized.
Yeah, and that it's even possible, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
And one of the other things is really getting clear on, we talked about clarity, right, in the cycle of progress, but really getting clear on what's your why. What is your why? Why do you want to take this action? Why do you want to accomplish this? Why are you doing what it is you think you should be doing? So the clarity is huge for also getting into action. Yeah? And so I would definitely recommend that. Thanks for the question. It's a great question.
Awesome. Okay, so you mentioned about making a shift, make that your foundation. What are ways that you can start making that your foundation or getting into the habit of that so that you can shift quickly?
Making what part of your foundation? Sorry.
Making the shift process part of your
Ah,
foundation so that you can shift quickly when you're not feeling like you're in, your zone
yeah.
or in where you should be.
Perfect. So one of them is starting at the S, which is working on increasing your awareness. And there are many ways to do that. Some of the tools I teach and I have encouraged my clients to do meditation, right? Meditation is actually a wonderful focusing tool. And so many people say, I can't sit still, I can't meditate, right?
Yeah.
There are as many ways to meditate as you can imagine. There's walking meditations, there's sitting meditations, there's breathing meditations. So meditation is only focusing on one thing. And it's the practice of bringing your mind. It's not that your mind is not going to wander, but it's the practice of bringing your mind back. And it really hones your ability to focus for extended periods. And that's why it's such a great tool, and it's been around for thousands of years, right? So meditation is one. Giving yourself some space to be with yourself. A lot of us, one of the ways that we stop ourselves is by doing too much. Believe it or not, being too busy and not leaving enough space. Isn't that interesting, right? So exercise is another great way of connecting with yourself and your body and starting to be more aware. Um, and asking for feedback. Asking for feedback from the people who are close to you. They would be only too happy. If you have kids, especially teenagers, ask them. They'll be happy to tell you.
Yeah, they'll tell you the truth for sure.
So hopefully that's helpful.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. Our next question is, what if you're not feeling confident and that's what's causing you to have fear?
Oh
How
yeah.
can, how can you battle that? Or how can you shift from that?
Right. So that's part of the process that I take people through as well. So one of the ways of building your it's a very interesting thing. Most times we're not confident, so we don't take action. And we're waiting, and our inner perfectionist, right? I don't know if you have one of those, but I have a really, I have a wonderfully strong inner perfectionist who used to sabotage me all the time because I wouldn't do something till it was just right? And it was just never quite good enough anyway. So it kept me in the cycle of procrastination. The thing is that taking an action, however imperfect, will lead you, and being in action leads to greater confidence. When you are learning a new skill, right, you're not good at it, right? When you're first learning something, you're not good at it. But the more that you take action, the more you repeat it, the more, if you stop being afraid to fail, to look bad, whatever it is, you will get better at that task. And that, as you build your skill, your confidence naturally increases. So that is where the support is really helpful in being able to move through that and take the action so that you can learn, oh, this was really false evidence appearing real. I really didn't have anything to be afraid of.
Okay, great. Hey, we have looks like one more question here. How can you avoid feeling stressful and overwhelmed throughout your day? So I guess if you're just every day or whatever is just life is just making you feel overwhelmed and stressful all the time, what are ways that you can stop that?
Okay, so again, I'm going to come back to the tool.
Uh, so I see a trend happening
I
here. So
see
I
a
think
trend.
this should be on your desk or maybe do you suggest maybe just doing this first thing in the morning after your meditation or whatever? Is that a good thing to do every day? Or is there something you do or recommend like getting your day started so that you don't have to worry about this stuff during the day?
Absolutely. I believe in starting your day by paying yourself first, right? Remember we talked about awareness and checking in and just honoring. It's that shift process is it's a it's a short process that can have you shift in the moment, but over time it becomes a metaphor for how you can transform your entire life. Okay? You've got to change your mindset. You've got to change your way of thinking, and that happens over time. But human beings, we learn through repetition. So the more that you repeat something, then it becomes a habit. We are unfortunately usually in the habit of thinking negatively. And so we create a lot of negative experiences. But as you change, to break a habit, you have to install a new habit. So one of the things that you can do is come up with uh, um, again, once you're clear on what it is you want, you come up with a statement, right? A focus statement or a new belief that you might be working on. One of the ones I work with a lot is um, everything I need comes to me exactly when I need it, right? So I'll remind myself of that. The other thing is when you're in anxiety in the middle of the day, get into the habit of asking yourself. You might even put it on a little post-it note and put it somewhere and go, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of right now? Because you know the thing about fear, when you caught it out, all of a sudden it goes, it's like shining a light on it, and all of a sudden it just disappears. Because most times it's not real fear. Real fear is there's a someone holding a gun to my head, yeah, or there's a lion chasing me. My life is actually in danger. And most times when we're feeling anxious, that is not the case.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes total sense. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's not a fear. It's just something that's subconsciously it's stopping you. It's not a physical
Hmm.
fear. And a lot of times too, I know that we blow it up in our head to be 10 times worse than it really is sometimes too if you don't get out of
Absolutely.
state of mind.
And of course, but depending on what your environment is, it's easier, which is sometimes why it's important to get outside help because if you're in a situation where it is very negative and where everyone else is on your wavelength, they can't pull you up. They can't pull you out, right? And so your environment plays a really important role and who you surround yourself with and knowing who to talk to when you feel that way, right? When you're having a bad day, it mightn't be the day to talk to your friend who is a pessimist, right?
Yeah.
Right? And that's part of really taking care of you, knowing what you need in any given moment. Um, it's the same reason we don't take a newborn baby to, well, most people. I've actually seen people do it, but why we don't take a brand new baby whose immune system is not well developed yet into a big crowd, right, and expose them to a lot of germs. So it's the same thing. When you are feeling vulnerable, you've got to surround yourself with things and people that uplift you, right? So it's a pet peeve of mine because we are so conditioned to believe that the smarter we are, the more experienced we are, the further along we are in life, is that the more independent we should be, and therefore we shouldn't need anyone. And the thing is that we can't do for ourselves what we do for others. A lot of times, the very things that we are most talented and gifted at helping others with is what we get frustrated because we go, oh, I'm able to help that person. Why can't I do it for myself, right? I help people get unstuck every day. I sometimes can't get myself unstuck. I have someone who helps me. It is one of the ways that we subtly sabotage ourselves a lot by telling ourselves, I should know how to do that. I should be able to do that. But you're not. So being honest with yourself is also a very important piece of this puzzle in breaking through. Admitting where you actually are to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's hard for business women and intelligent women, educated women to do that. Because, I know as a businesswoman myself that, sometimes that is hard. And you think because you are an independent person, and most entrepreneurs are, and we feel like, I'm an independent person, built my business this far, or I've accomplished this, or I've accomplished that, so why can't I accomplish this, what seems like a small thing, or why can't I move to another level that I know I'm capable of, I'm smart enough to do so, but something's keeping me from getting there. And that's what it is that you're talking about, that you can find out what that is so you don't stop, so you don't feel like, okay, I'm so smart, I'm educated, I've come this far, I've done this, I've done that, now what gives, kind of thing. And so that's very true with especially independent entrepreneur women. We feel independent and feel like, oh, well, I should be able to do this on my own.
Yeah.
When really, no, you shouldn't.
And so often, yeah, that it's really subtle, because the thing is that it feels really true, right? When the fear and the limiting beliefs, they feel really true, and oftentimes we have lots of evidence to support them. Because a funny thing happens with your brain is that it actually the beliefs that you have it will find things and show you the things that align with those beliefs. So we often think, well, I'll believe it when I see it, right? But it's really the other way around. It's when you believe it, you will see it.
Wow, that's awesome. I like that. That made a light bulb go off. That was a aha. That's great. All right, I believe that's all for our
Yeah.
questions, and we're kind of getting close to our time. I'm gonna hide again and let you close up with everyone. And thanks for letting me come in and feed the questions to you. But I'm gonna hide. And thanks for answering all the questions.
You're welcome, and thanks for all of you who showed up today. I hope that you've found some nugget of wisdom here. This is a subject that I could speak for days on, and I do. And for those of you who are in the Maryland area, I'm actually having a one-day Shift into Your $1 Million Zone live workshop next Saturday, October the 11th. And if you go to my website under the events page, you will see a link to read more about that. And if you care to join us, if it moves you, I would love to have you there. It's $97, and it's well worth your time and your energy and your money, because it's a very interactive process, and we will actually be looking at all of these things. What does your $1 million zone look like? How do you get out of your own way? And for those of you who aren't in the area, and even those of you who are, please go ahead and click on the link and schedule a time. I'd love to have a chat with you and see how I can help you. Take care. Thank you.